He may have joined the club just 4 days ago, but there is no mistaking that there is a new Texan in the Senate. From government spending to gun control, this Tea Party Republican is ready to make his mark in a town that he has been none too shy to criticize. Joining me now to talk about the future of his party and his stand on the issues is Senator Ted Cruz. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, this time as a senator.
Good morning, John. I'm very glad to be here.
You know, one of the first orders of business for you will be to consider nominees for the president's second-term cabinet. Among them expected to be former Nebraska Senator Chuck Hagel. It's expected the president will make that announcement in the next couple of days. How will you vote on Hagel?
If Hagel is nominated, it is very difficult to imagine a circumstance in which I could support his confirmation. It's interesting. The president seems bound and determined to proceed down this path, despite the fact that Hagel's record is very, very troubling on the nation of Israel. He has not been a friend to Israel, and in my view, the United States should stand unshakably with the nation of Israel. And he has consistently advocated weakness with respect to our enemies, with respect to the nation of Iran. He has opposed sanctions over and over again, and the job of the Secretary of Defense is to be a serious, credible strength and deterrent. And unfortunately, I think weakness in a Secretary of Defense invites conflict because bullies don't respect weakness.
What's your problem with Hagel on the issue of Israel?
With respect to the issue of Israel, he has repeatedly opposed Israel, criticized Israel, placed all the blame on Israel in dispute after dispute after dispute, and in fact, he's publicly said U.S. policy is dependent on what he calls the Israel lobby, which is a pejorative term that I think does not reflect the realities of the strong U.S. national security interest in maintaining that alliance.
That statement that he made was to Aaron David Miller, former U.S. diplomat. I was going to save this for the panel, but maybe we could bring it up now. Here's what he said to David Aaron Miller regarding Israel, and it was quoted in his new book, The Much Too Promised Land. He said that people on Capitol Hill, I'm paraphrasing here as we try to get this up, people on Capitol Hill are afraid of the Israel lobby. He says, well, I'm a U.S. senator. Here we go here. The Jewish lobby intimidates a lot of people up here. I'm a United States senator. I'm not an Israeli senator. But in an article in Foreign Policy magazine back at the beginning of December, Aaron David Miller said, well, what he was talking about there wasn't as dire as many people are making it out to be. He is opposed to some Israeli policies, but he's certainly not anti-Israeli. He's not anti-Semitic. And this is the guy who he said it to. So do you buy Mr. Miller's argument?
Look, I don't know. I'm not going to speak to Mr. Hagel's heart. But what I am concerned about is his record and his past policy positions. And he's previously expressed that with respect to Iran, with respect to Israel, that he doesn't want criticism from other nations of the world. You know, that's not the job of the defense secretary. He's not being nominated to be Secretary of State. You want to talk about the most effective diplomacy this nation has seen in modern times? I would suggest it was Ronald Reagan standing up and winning the Cold War without firing a shot. And that was done through strength, not through, if you're an Iranian mullah right now and you're looking at a Chuck Hagel who thinks sanctions are too harsh, you've got to be laughing at the prospects of anything harsher than sanctions.
All of that said, Senator, do you think he will be confirmed?
You know, I don't know. I do think it is interesting that the president seems hell-bent on nominating him, despite the fact that a number of prominent Republicans have criticized him, and the Democratic senators have been surprisingly silent on it. I think this is a president right now who has drunk the tea. On election, he is feeling very good about himself. He is feeling like there can be no opposition to his position, and so he doesn't seem terribly concerned that there's not a lot of support for Chuck Hagel in the Senate.
Another big nomination coming forward will be for Treasury Secretary as well. Tim Geithner expected to lead perhaps before the debt ceiling debate takes place. Jack Lew, who's currently the chief of staff over at the White House, is the leading candidate. How would you vote on Lew?
You know, I would have to look at his record and listen to what he has to say. I'll tell you my view on any Treasury Secretary would be that I would want to hear some real proposals for growth. You know, in this whole debate about the fiscal cliff, we've been talking about taxes, we've been talking about spending. Noticeably absent from this equation has been growth. And the biggest economic problem of the last 4 years has been the dismal economic growth. Under Barack Obama, our economy has grown 1.5% a year for 4 years. That is less than half the historical average.
This gets into your whole idea of retooling the Republican Party under the heading of opportunity conservatism, which I'd like to get into in just a second. But do you share the distaste of Jack Lew that a lot of your Republican colleagues have over the way that he conducted himself during the debt ceiling debate of 2011? A lot of people said he was arrogant, impossible to work with, rigid.
Well, I will confess I wasn't up here during that debate, so he wasn't arrogant to me, but I had not dealt with the man. So I'll keep an open mind. And with any Treasury Secretary nominee, my view is going to be looking to the substance, and this is not supposed to be a popularity contest. This is about fixing the problems that are affecting millions of Americans. People all over this country, I don't think they're interested in the political squabbles in the Capitol. They're interested in getting the economy going, getting jobs back, and that's where our focus needs to be.
So we've got a debt ceiling debate that's coming up again. You probably heard Mitch McConnell or heard of Mitch McConnell saying this morning, the revenue piece is done, no new taxes. Are you going to hold to that line, that the president will not get any more revenue, and the only thing that the president has to deal with here is spending cuts?
Well, I'm going to suggest a slight tweak to it.
Okay.
I'm happy for there to be lots of new revenue. I'm not happy for there to be new taxes. The best avenue for new revenue is economic growth. If the economy is sputtering along at 1%, 1.5%, 2% GDP growth, tax revenues plummet, people hurt, people are out of jobs. If we get the economy up to the historical level, since World War II, the average has been 3.3%. In the fourth year of Reagan's presidency, our economy grew 7.2%. If we can get GDP growth up to 3, 4, 5%, that will be dramatically more revenue to pay off the deficit and debt. But the way to do it is through pro-growth policies, not new and additional taxes.
Senator, are you willing to risk default on our debt by taking this debt ceiling battle right to the limit?
No, and let me be very clear about this. I do not support default on the debt. We should never default on the debt. And the only players in Washington who are threatening default on the debt are President Barack Obama and Harry Reid. This is an issue, and earlier in this show you played the president threatening default. In any given month, federal tax revenues are approximately $200 billion a month. Interest on the debt is $30 to $40 billion a month. There is plenty of revenue to service the debt, and any responsible president would have stood at that podium and said, under any circumstances, whatever happens with the debt ceiling, we will always pay our debt. We will never default on the debt. And the reason the president isn't doing that is he's trying to scare people. He is trying to raise this specter of a financial apocalypse.
I want to get into a couple of other issues quickly because we are running short on time, despite the fact that we have a lot of time on this program. Gun control. You probably heard in the last segment we were talking about 10 bills introduced in the House of Representatives regarding gun control. Joe Biden is leading a study group at the White House. You are a fierce defender of Second Amendment rights. You were in 2010 given the NRA's Freedom Fund Award. Is there any new gun control that you would accept?
The reason we're discussing this is because of the tragedy in Newtown. And every parent, my wife and I, we've got 2 little girls, age 4 and age 2. Every parent was horrified at what happened there. To see 20 children, 6 adults senselessly murdered, it takes your breath away. But within minutes, we saw politicians run out and try to exploit this tragedy, try to push their political agenda of gun control. I do not support their gun control agenda for 2 reasons. Number one, it's unconstitutional.
But is there any that you would accept?
I don't think the proposals being discussed now make sense. Look, are there things we could do? Sure. One of the things we could do is we could improve the quality of the federal database. Right now, a lot of states, a lot of local jurisdictions are not reporting criminal convictions, not reporting mental health barriers to ownership, and so the federal database is not nearly as good as it should be. That would be a common sense improvement. But that's not what is being proposed. Senator Dianne Feinstein's bill would create a national gun registry. I don't think the federal government has any business having a list of law-abiding citizens who choose to exercise their right to keep and bear arms.
In the time we have left, Senator, I want to talk to you about the future of the Republican Party, because after what happened in November, a lot of people are talking about, wow, what do we need to do? Some people are saying, look at changing demographics in the country, more minorities, they traditionally vote Democratic, we've got to be more moderate. You wrote an op-ed piece in the Washington Post the other day that, no, you need to retrench conservative values and develop opportunity conservatism to try to help people live the American dream. Is that really the right way to go when you look at the changing demographics in the country?
I think it's exactly the right way to go. The reason I am a conservative is because conservative policies work and they improve opportunity. They are the avenue for climbing the economic dream. And what I have been talking about for many years is opportunity conservatism, that every policy should focus like a laser on easing the means of ascent up the economic ladder, that we should be championing the 47%. To take that now infamous comment. Look, the great thing about Americans don't want to be dependent on government. Dependency saps the spirit. It doesn't work. Americans want to stand on their own 2 feet, and the best way to do that is have policies that allow entrepreneurs and small businesses to thrive and to create jobs and advance the American dream.
Senator, you said famously a couple of times, we don't have time to play the actual sound, but so many politicians get elected promising to go up to Capitol Hill, cut spending, live conservative values, then turn into spineless jellyfish. What's to prevent you from becoming a spineless jellyfish here in the climate of Washington?
Well, the great thing about the election we just went through is that we saw hundreds of thousands of grassroots activists across Texas and across the nation stand up against a mountain of money, a mountain of attacks. We weren't supposed to win this race. And so I feel like I'm coming into office surrounded by and lifted up by those grassroots conservatives who I am happy to stand with over and over again.
But as Mitch McConnell proved the other day, governing requires compromise, particularly when you're in the minority in the Senate. A Democratic president just got reelected for another 4 years. So how, it's one thing to criticize Washington when you're a candidate, but when you get here, you've got to govern. How do you do that?
Well, I think the fiscal cliff deal was a lousy deal. But I think moving forward with the debt ceiling, I think those who believe in limited spending and in solving the debt and not bankrupting our kids have the advantage in the negotiation on the debt ceiling. If we can stand strong and insist on, number one, structural reforms to fix the problems, and number two, pro-growth policies so we can grow the economy, we can get jobs back, we can get people back to work, I think we can win that debate and win that argument. I don't think what Washington needs is more compromise. I think what Washington needs is more common sense and more principle.
Senator Cruz, it's good to get to know you. Thanks so much for dropping by, and good luck.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, appreciate it.